organization for giving on behalf of my colleagues to come here and present our work. So admin disclosures. Just to provide a little bit of background, as we know, left ventricular assist devices have been increasingly utilized in treatment of end-stage heart failure. Now, with the advancement of device technology, we've seen a significant improvement in survival and quality of life for patients who are treated with these pumps. Here's the data from the most recently published 2-year follow-up to the Momentum 3 trial, showing an event-free survival of nearly 80% at 2 years, in an outcome measure that rivals cardiac transplantation. Patients with this device also enjoyed a significant improvement in symptoms as measured by their NYHA classification, with 70 to 80% of the population reporting NYHA class 1 or 2 symptoms at 3 months follow-up that persisted throughout the duration of the trial follow-up. However, despite the improvement in survival and reported quality of life measures, the excess capacity in these individuals remains significantly impaired. As you can see, again, the data from the recently published Momentum trial, that after LVAD implantation, there was an initial improvement in excess capacity as measured by 6-minute walk test around 300 meters. And 300 meters, a marker that we use in advanced heart failure is a marker of poor, for advanced disease and extremely poor survival. So just to review, what are some limitations into what limits patients with LVAD support in terms of their excess capacity. In continuous flow LVADs, the pump flow is directly proportional to speed, as we know, and it's inversely proportional to the pressure head, which is the difference between the aorta and the left ventricular cavity. Now, even within the continuous flow device segments, axial flow devices and centrifugal flow devices have different hemodynamic changes in terms of their loading conditions. Here you can see in the axial pump, the cursor over, or if you can point to the figure on the right, is the axial flow shows a very steep and an inverse linear relationship between flow and head pressure. While in contrast, the centrifugal flow pump is much flatter and it's much more susceptible to pressure changes. So as you can see here, with just a small change with the same change in head pressure between the two groups, the centrifugal flow pumps are able to generate a large change in flow. So given these changes in the hemodynamics and the hemodynamic profile of these pumps, we sought to characterize that response to exercise in patients supported with continuous flow LVADs, both the centrifugal flow pumps and axial pumps. And also to understand the mechanism which limits this improvement in excess capacity in these individuals. Given the hemodynamic profile, we hypothesized that the centrifugal forces or centrifugal flow pumps would be associated with an improved excess capacity as compared to axial devices due to their increased sensitivity to pressure changes across the LVAD circuit. So for this purpose, we enrolled 39 patients who came to our cardiac catheterization laboratory for routine post-LVAD hemodynamic assessment and optimization following their LVAD implant between the period of December 2017 and 2018. 12 of those patients were supported with axial flow device, HeartMate 2, and 27 were with centrifugal flow pumps, 5 with HVADs, and 22 patients with the newest HeartMate 3 device. Patients who had significant arrhythmias, rapid atrial fibrillation, ventricular arrhythmias, or who were deemed to be in a decompetent state were not enrolled in the study. Each patient was then brought to our cardiopulmonary exercise laboratory, where they underwent an upright incremental bicycle exercise with an increase in workload by 25 watts every 3 minutes. During the period of exercise, we performed a breath-by-breath respiratory analysis, as well as invasive monitoring via Swan-Ganz catheter, and the arterial blood pressure was measured with a terminal blood pressure cuff and recorded at every stage. Here are some of the baseline characteristics. In our cohort, the axial patients who were supported with axial devices tended to be a little younger. There were more males in that group, almost 100% of them were males, and more patients had the device implanted for a bridge to transplant indication as opposed to centrifugal flow group. However, there was no difference between the etiology of the cardiomyopathy, their hemoglobin levels, the duration of LVAD support, or medication prescriptions they received, including beta blockers and immunotherm between the two cohorts. When we assessed cardiovascular or cardiopulmonary exercise test parameters, essentially all across the board, anyone that was supported with continuous flow LVAD demonstrated an extremely reduced exercise capacity based on all measures. However, when we looked at axial versus centrifugal flow cohorts, patients who were supported with axial flow devices tended to have slightly higher peak VO2 compared to the centrifugal flow cohort. They were able to exercise for a longer duration and achieve a higher peak load compared to centrifugal flow. Now here's a closer look at their hemodynamics. In the blue, or the light blue section, it's the axial cohort. The pink is the centrifugal flow cohort, and as a group, patients who supported continuous flow LVAD were represented in the purple bars. Here, it seems like our entire cohort was pretty quite compensated and decongested, as you can see, based on their RA and pulmonary capillary wedge pressures. There were significant differences in the RA and the wedge pressure at rest between the axial and the centrifugal flow cohorts. However, at exercise, they were relatively similar. With regards to the resistive indices and head pressure, there was no significant difference at rest or with exercise, but we did demonstrate that with exercise, this systemic vascular resistance did decrease, and the head pressure did decrease as well, just it was not different amongst the two cohorts. Of note, with the heart rate, there was no change in the heart rate at baseline. However, patients who were supported with axial flow devices had a higher increase in heart rate with exercise compared to the centrifugal flow device. I want to draw your attention to this slide. It's a little busy slide. So here, in this slide, we show an intrinsic LVAD flow, total cardiac output as calculated by a Fick principle for each of the patients at each of their workloads. In the bottom two lines are the intrinsic flow for the centrifugal flow device and the axial flow device. As you can see, there's a very small incremental increase in intrinsic LVAD flow in response to exercise. However, that difference was significant amongst the axial group versus the centrifugal group. In the top two lines, where you see the intrinsic cardiac output, which is a total cardiac output that was calculated using the Fick formula, you see a much steeper curve, suggesting the importance of intrinsic myocardial reserve and cardiac capacity in these individuals that's responsible for augmentation in their cardiac output during exercise. And that is delineated more on the graph on the right side, where you see a steeper curve. There was no difference between axial and centrifugal flow cohorts when it came to measuring intrinsic cardiac output with different stages of their cardiac output. Just switching gears a little, we also wanted to see, were there any predictors to peak VO2 when it came to just using continuous flow LVAD cohort in general? And using the Pearson's coefficient analysis, we found that the greatest correlation to peak VO2 and excess capacity was suggested from the total Fick cardiac output and also the intrinsic cardiac output, which was the Fick cardiac output minus the internal LVAD flow. And in our multivariate analysis as well, when we did that analysis, the best predictor of peak VO2 was their total cardiac output. We recognize the limitations of our study. It was obviously a single center study. There were a small number of patients involved, and our cohorts were not ideally matched. As you mentioned, the axial cohort, they were all males, they were younger in age, and most of them had device implanted for bridge to transplant indication. And also the lack of simultaneous echocardiogram prevented us from analyzing and evaluating the RV function and the aortic valve opening during the time of exercise as well. But despite that, in our small cohort, we showed that patients who were supported with the axial flow device demonstrated an enhanced functional capacity when compared to centrifugal flow device. But overall, patients who had continuous flow, who were supported with continuous flow LVADs, demonstrated severely diminished excess capacity, as also relayed from a prior speaker. Part of it's because of limited augmentation in device flow through the device itself, and the result of that is that the native cardiac capacity has become the major predictor of excess performance. in order to improve functional capacity in these individuals who are supported with continuous flow LVADs, what we need is improvement in technology. Technology that devices pumps that are demand-based, that can modulate speed based on the work requirement to improve functional capacity in these individuals. Thank you very much.
So any comments from the floor?
Thank you, this is an excellent study. I'm really glad you mentioned the myocardial intrinsic function because I think this is key here. And when you look at your data in more detail, what would be interesting to find out is this difference between the role of blood pressure, especially if there's an estimation of aortic blood pressure and peripheral resistance. Because you mentioned the head pressure, which is ultimately the key thing in an afterload sensitive pump. Now, having said this, I'm absolutely astounded at the difference in heart rate response. So, number one, this suggests an intrinsic myocardial problem, not a pump problem. And number two, do you think that these patients have an autonomic problem?
No, I absolutely agree. And I think there is chronotropic incompetence has been shown to play a big role in this. And in our cohorts, because of the small numbers, we weren't able to sort of statistically signify whether that played a role in it or not. Also, our cohorts were not ideally matched, and that may potentially play a role. They tended to be a little younger. They had devices implanted for which transplant indication, perhaps a much healthier cohort compared to the centrifugal flow device. But nonetheless, it has been described in the past that potentially patients with accessible devices do have that intrinsic chronotropic competence that you lose with the other devices as well.
But it seems to be massively bigger in the centrifugal pump, so that's the really interesting new finding, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we need to certainly expand our cohort more to delve into more regarding that finding as well.
Hi, Bill Cornwell from Colorado. First, that was beautiful. Thanks for sharing. It's a wonderful study. Two questions I had. Actually, on this slide here, as we have exercised these people, what I think are some of the most impressive results are the wedge pressures. It always surprises me, and we have very similar data, that the wedge pressures very frequently get up into the upper 20s or low 30s, and you've got kind of a wide standard deviation there. So some of your patients have wedges. Number one, why do you think that is? You know, when they've got basically a hose that's theoretically draining blood out of the left ventricle during exercise, and theoretically it doesn't seem like that should be allowed to happen. And then number two, on your predictors of VO2, I don't remember if I saw a VO2 difference listed as a predictor, but what are your thoughts on the contribution of the AVO2 difference on the ability to exercise?
So I'll answer the first question first regarding pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. And I think as your cardiac output improves, as more venous return to your right side circulation, I think that blood is responsible for part of that. But I think also it's a compensatory mechanism with the pump itself that relies on the pressure differential between the aorta and LV and diastolic pressure. As a surrogate, we can use MAP minus the wedge pressure. And so when you have lower of that differential, that's probably the driving force for the internal LVAD output. With regards to AVO2, I believe, I'm not sure if we did look at that, but I'll have to look more into the detail of that analysis, but I do not think we sort of analyzed that directly.
Thank you, very, very nice, thank you.
I have a question for you. According to the numbers are a little bit different than in abstract. And in abstract, you had like 34 patients, and now you have 39. And in abstract, you found that 20% of the patients were excluded from the study. That's 9. That's 20%. So maybe due to 6 were unstable and 3 didn't want to.
Right, and
so they refused. So maybe do you have any data in what kind of pump they had, centrifugal or
so yeah, I apologize for that. We did update our cohort with
okay. But let's say that it's high number. Let's give all 6 and plus 3 or 9 were, let's say, HeartMate 2. Then it changed everything.
No,
maybe do you have any data?
So I do not recall which patients were excluded.
Okay.
The newer patients that were enrolled also, I do not recall what devices that they carried, but there was an update in the number of patients that were from 34 to 39 during our more recent analysis.
It was a beautiful study. I would like to ask you, I agree on the comment the last person said, that it's dramatically how the wedge increases with exercise. Do you think we have to be more aggressive with vasodilators? Is a mean blood pressure of 80, 88, even in the actual flow pumps, acceptable for these patients? Because then with exercise, obviously the more you take the afterload down, the less maybe that increase in wedge pressure will be.
No, absolutely. I think that blood pressure, if you can move it down a little bit more, will increase the head pressure, will actually reduce the head pressure, and allow for an internal pump to augment as well, or maybe provide a better or improved internal flow through the device in addition to the augmentation we will receive from the myocardium as well, and overall input output in totality. And I think it sort of brings to the forefront of importance of neurohormonal therapy and medical management of patients despite being supported with continuous flow devices.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's move forward. We like to call Dr. Ton